Hey guys, it's Dad with Dad's Guide to Adulting. I hope you're doing well and that you're having a great day. Today we're going to continue talking about some of the important rules for living, and in this video we're going to talk about an important lesson that I learned in a commencement speech when I graduated from college. The speaker that we had that day was Lee Iacocca. He was then the chairman of the Chrysler Corporation. And he said to us that he was going to have to try and figure out a way to distill down all the wisdom that we had learned from our parents, our teachers, our professors, and everything we had figured out all on our own, and he had to do that before the champagne got warm. But what he basically said was, I want you to remember 3 words for the rest of your life. And those 3 words were think for yourself. Those 3 words I have remembered all my life, and I hope you will remember all of yours. Mr. Iacocca explained that we had been blessed to grow up in the United States and receive good educations, and so that we should have the confidence to think for ourselves and apply that in our daily lives. Well, that seems like a rather obvious lesson, but it is also one that many of us have a hard time doing on a regular basis. We worry constantly about what other people think about us, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our bosses. So we tend not to express opinions of our own, but to conform to the way the crowd thinks. When we read the news, we only look at the headlines and we don't read deeply in to get facts and find out whether the author has an opinion that's skewed one way or the other. When listening to politicians, we oftentimes tend to be persuaded by what they say most forcefully, without actually doing the research ourselves and coming to our own conclusions. And we don't stop to think whether what they are saying is true and right and a positive influence in the world. As you go through life, I want to encourage you to resist those temptations. Do your homework. Study the issues. Talk to people of different viewpoints and read news stories from different media outlets with different perspectives. And then, after you've gathered all the facts, come to your own conclusions. It's perfectly fine for you to look at the same evidence and the same facts as other people and reach a different conclusion from them. Now, I'm not suggesting that you become stubborn or that you become arrogant. The idea of thinking for yourself does not mean refusing to change your mind if other facts or evidence suggest that you should. It does not mean that you should stop learning. You should never stop learning. You should never stop studying. Your responsibility to yourself and to this country and to your community is to continue to learn, to study, and be willing to change your mind if the circumstances warrant. But you should always analyze the evidence yourself, apply the principles that you hold dear and the values you care about, and come to your own conclusions. Thinking for yourself also means sticking to your guns in the face of opposition or adversity. All of the world's greatest and most influential leaders have thought for themselves and have changed the way the world functioned through the sheer force of their own personality and ideas. So let me give you a couple of quick examples. For example, in politics, right before World War II, Winston Churchill, the leader of Great Britain, stood almost alone in warning about the dangers of Adolf Hitler and Nazism. The vast majority of Europeans did not want another world war, and they were willing to appease Hitler or give him what he wanted in the hopes that that would prevent a war. Churchill recognized Hitler for what he was. He recognized that only by standing up to him and fighting the Nazis would the world ever be safe. And when the war eventually started, the British called on Churchill to lead them, which he did with great valor. In politics also, Dr. Martin Luther King. One of the greatest things that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did was to conduct the civil rights movement on the basis of nonviolent resistance. If he had allowed his movement to become violent, which many other civil rights leaders and many other people thought was necessary given the violence that was being imposed on them, we would have had a very different outcome than what we did. As it was, because he insisted on nonviolence, he ended up persuading many people, including a number of members of Congress, to support the movement, and we ended up with civil rights legislation that changed the way this country operates. In business, a good example is Steve Jobs of Apple. Steve Jobs thought for himself, and he transformed that company based on his own ideas of what design should look like. He entirely changed the world of personal computing in the face of great opposition. Those are all examples of leaders thinking for themselves. It's not necessary for you to change the world, but it is important for you to think for yourself in your day-to-day activity. Apply the same rule. Always continue learning, always being willing to be persuaded to change your mind based on facts and evidence, but never change your mind simply because somebody else believes something different. In everything you do in your life, have the confidence to do what Lee Iacocca told us to do back in 1986. If we want to succeed in our careers and as citizens, we have to think for ourselves. I hope you will do that for all your days. That's it for this video. We'll see you next time. Until then, remember, you got this.